Afternoon, everyone. It's Evan Burton again. Beautiful day. Give a shout out to Burton Snowboards. Right on, Jake. Passed away recently. Try to keep that, get some positive juju going through that last name, the Welsh last name that it is. Even though he's not my relative. And if I knew more about, Tim Burton or anything like that, I would probably give him a shout out too. Anyways, today we're going to talk about 8 things I learned from experiencing homelessness. So, I'm actually 3 days removed from being homeless, and this is the second time I've been homeless. The first time I was homeless, I was in Canada. I ran away, or I got kicked out of my parents' apartment, ran away to Canada. So, this time around, I became homeless after I escaped jail, which is a story, like an hour-long story that I recorded, but I haven't posted. I'm not sure what I want to do with that footage, if I want to redo it or just post it raw or hyper-edit it. I'm not sure what to do with it yet, but I'll get to that story. I was homeless in Michigan. I escaped from I was homeless for about 3 or 4 nights, which is not bad. It did get down to like 33 degrees each night, and up to about 60 degrees during the day. So here are 8 things I learned from being homeless from these 2 experiences. The first one being in about year 2016. I was in Toronto, and this year, starting on April Fool's Day 2020, I was homeless in Holly, Michigan, Clarkston, Michigan, Pontiac, Michigan. So, my first experience with homelessness, here are 8 things I learned from it. The first thing I learned from being homeless, in my experiences with homelessness, is that there's plenty of food. If you find a shelter, you can have seconds, thirds, whole pizzas. They'll give you. America, at least, has plenty of food to go around for everyone. I've been in third world countries where I've eaten far less, and not only was I spending money in countries like Thailand and places in Central America, I was probably living off about $1,000 a month. Whereas in a shelter, it's completely free. At least when I was at, it was 90 days where you stay. You get 3 free meals a day, sometimes second and third helpings. They gave me an entire pizza the day I left, right before I left for lunch, and that was our second lunch. And it was a large pizza. I ended up eating half the large pizza. My dad showed up, take me home to Winnetka, and I was able to give away the second half of that pizza to another homeless person. The second thing I learned from homelessness and experiencing it is that there are plenty of open beds. I even went to, and this is during coronavirus, like right smack dab in the peak or middle or low peak or high peak of coronavirus, when I escaped on April Fool's Day 2020. And the first shelter I went to was actually turned out to be a long-term shelter where, and this is interesting to know, and this is actually my second point, but anyways, the first shelter I went to was full, or they were closed. They weren't accepting people because of coronavirus. Just down the street, I took a free bus. The buses are running free right now due to coronavirus. Within the same city, I found a shelter that had 20 plus open beds. The shelter had 60 beds, and 40 of them were full. which means about 20 left. Number three thing I learned about experiencing homelessness is that they actually have long-term residential um, shelters as well. The one I stayed at was about 90-day maximum. They had one in the downtown area of Pontiac called Grace Hope that you stay for a year and then they set you up with an apartment where you can stay after that. And I just presume I presume they'll give you a job as well or help you get a job. Number four is that at least in Michigan there's a church called St. Vincent de Paul, and they'll give you a 1 week hotel stay if you can't find a shelter to stay in or can't find anywhere to stay. The number four thing I learned is that hitchhiking, when you get picked up by hitchhikers, at least in my instance, I got picked up twice on April 1st, that the people who pick you up are generally couples with the male figure doing the driving. And I was dirty as hell. I just came out of a swamp, emerged from a swamp, climbed through thorn bushes, burrs all over me, mud all over me. My feet were soaked, my socks were soaked, my shorts were soaked. And I got in the car. It had an oil rig in the front, it smelled like fresh ganja. Nice people. And we're hitting vapes too in front of their car. And at first I was like, oh, maybe that's why it smells like THC in here, or marijuana. So I asked him, are those marijuana vaporizers or THC vaporizers? Because I was curious, because I got a message on Instagram. Weed just became legal in Michigan while I was out there, from someone offering me a THC vaporizer. And I thought it sounded cool or interesting, so I wanted to learn more about it. It turned out it was a nicotine vaporizer just like this, and I didn't have my vaporizer on me. All I had was a cell phone and a pair of shorts and a jacket and a toothbrush, which I don't know how I lucked out and had a toothbrush in my jacket pocket, but I did. Anyways, he offered the nicotine vaporizer in the midst of this coronavirus on April Fool's Day. Someone who he had just pat down to see if I had a gun in my pocket so that he could let me into his car, just emerged from swampland woods onto the middle of a 8-lane highway, and waving my flashlight around like a idiot on my cell phone. No money, no mobile cellular plan, no Wi-Fi. Well, I guess I could get Wi-Fi, but only in places where there was Wi-Fi, which I was in the middle of the woods, 200 acres, so there was no Wi-Fi available for me there at that moment. However, this first couple was extremely generous and kind, sympathetic. They paid it forward. They were non-paranoid, super chill, down-to-earth people. And they ended up taking me to a mom-and-pop liquor store, or whatever. I don't know what that means, but they took me to a liquor store, family-owned, where they thought I would have the best chance of getting sent in the right direction, and that would be open during this coronavirus crisis at that hour, which it was about 11 p.m. And they took me there, and they added me on Snapchat, and they offered to give me a ride to Flint from Clarkston the next day around 11 a.m. if I still needed a ride. Fortunately, I got picked up by a second couple that night, and they were a very similar couple, except a bit older, maybe in their early mid 30s. Um, I don't think they had kids yet, but they seem like a couple who's yet to the age where they should be thinking about having kids, deciding not to have kids, or trying to have kids. And they actually put me up in a hotel for the night for $56.71. They bought me they bought me a McChicken and a large coffee from McDonald's in the drive-through. Um, they took me from the highway, the middle of the highway, waving my flashlight, to the neighboring town called Pontiac, and put me in a hotel, called shelters for me. This is all at around 11:30 p.m. and told me what to do the next day. So when I woke up the next morning, I had a destination to go to, a 2-mile walk to the nearest shelter that they had called the night before. It turned out that this was the 1-year shelter where you had to make an appointment before you came, and they weren't even making appointments because of coronavirus. However, this shelter happened to be just down the street from a bus station. I took a bus to a big outlet mall. At the outlet mall, I met another person. Long story short, I ended up at a shelter with the same name, except it was just called Hope instead of Grace Hope, in the same town. And yeah, this second couple took care of me as well. No paranoia, super calm. So I guess the moral of the story there is, if you're worried about hitchhiking and you don't think someone will pick you up, I say where there's a will, there's a way, and as long as you're determined to get picked up, you'll get picked up. And then just from my experience with the 2 people I successfully hitchhiked with on the 2 highways that I successfully hitchhiked on in my entire life, or no, I got picked up by a person in Canada as well. He was super nice. I didn't even ask him for a ride. He offered me one because he saw me walking, dragging bags down country road in the middle of Canada, lake territory. And anyways, they're all super nice people. Had plenty of good advice and help because there were locals there. And these are 2 places I'm unfamiliar with. I'm from Chicago area and Chicago's North Chicago suburbs. So I was pretty much in Canada. I was totally lost, and at least at that point I had a cell phone with service and signal, and I had a debit card with a limited amount of cash on it. In Michigan, leaving Holly, going to Pontiac and Clarkston, and from Holly to Clarkston and Clarkston to Pontiac, I had no idea where I was or what. I had no money, no service plan, and actually the girlfriend of the couple who picked me up from Holly going to Clarkston, who dropped me off at the liquor store, they actually turned on their mobile hotspot for me so I could get internet in the car ride. The number 6 thing I learned from my homelessness experiences is that you will get really tan. This is pretty much guaranteed as long as there's sunlight outside. Even if there's not, the sun still goes through the clouds, you just don't even realize it. And I found this being outside to be extremely nourishing. It's great. I can tell it's really good for your mind and body. And obviously when you don't have a roof over your head, you're outside, you're exposed to the elements, you're absorbing sunlight, you're taking in healthy natural light through your eyes, and you might even do some sun gazing, or using the sun to see what time it might be, or looking at the stars to find what direction you're going. And just being out in nature, exposed to the elements, all that's really good for you. It kind of keeps you in the present moment, and I'm sure all that vitamin D you get from the sun is great for you. You get hand good, and if you look good, you also feel better about yourself too. Sometimes it's good for your self-esteem, and you do a lot of walking. You get some exercise. You learn your way around through memory and not through Google Maps, which is something that in this day and age, at least for me, I don't memorize directions anywhere unless I'm homeless, I guess, or walking. The only way I actually retain where I'm going or where I've gone or how I got from A to B is if I'm walking. They say you're supposed to get 10,000 steps a day, and I promise you, if you're homeless, you'll get that 10,000 steps a day. So it's probably good for your physical health too, as long as you wash your hands and use proper hygiene, brush your teeth, which you might not be fortunate to have. I was lucky enough to have a toothbrush in my pocket thanks to my fiance putting it there a couple weeks before, so that I could brush my teeth at her dorm when I was over there. It had floss in it, and some toothpaste, and so I was lucky to have that. But you can still practice proper hygiene. You can find a bathroom to wash your hands, wash off the dirt off of your hands or legs. The number 7 thing I learned from homelessness is where there's a will, there's a way, and that's kind of been my motto for years now. Just not just about homelessness, but it turns out if you're determined to find a place to sleep for the night, and this is when where there's a will, there's a way becomes apparent, and where I've actually experienced it as sound truth in life. If you're determined to find a place to sleep for the night or a longer term shelter for the next night, if you're single-minded in this mission, I promise you'll find a place to sleep that night, and you'll find a place that will serve you 3 meals a day and give you shelter for at least 30 to 90 days. The day after that, I started my homeless expedition adventure at around. I started my homelessness expedition this time around April 1st at around 8:30 p.m. I went through a 200-acre farm and the woods surrounding it and swamps surrounding it to get to the highway. And by 11 or 12, I was in a hotel, getting put up in a hotel, taking a hot shower, and 2 miles away from a shelter for the next day. So just put your head down, get it done. Even just finding the highway was where there's a will, there's a way. It's like, I'm gonna find the highway, and I don't know where the highway is, and I don't know how I'm gonna get there, but I know that's what I'm gonna do, and I'm just gonna keep walking until I get there. And I did. That's what happened. Number 8 thing I learned from homelessness is that 60 degrees is cold to sleep on, especially if you're on a sidewalk or some hard surface, and even if you're in a jacket. So it teaches you to appreciate your thermostat, which keeps the temperature consistent throughout the night for you. Appreciate your heater, appreciate your air conditioner, appreciate your comforter, your mattress, your soft mattress that doesn't shoot hard coldness at you. Appreciate what you have that's keeping you warm at night, cool at night, because it's really hard to sleep when you're freezing cold. In Toronto, it was probably about 50s to 60s. I had snow pants, I had a ski jacket, I had layers and I put everything that I owned on at one time, and I was still cold. It was 50s to 60s at night. I was sleeping on the cement. I didn't know what I was doing at that point, but I guess that could be number 9, is just because you're out on the street doesn't mean you can't find a place inside to sleep. If you put your head down and get determined, you can find a place within hours that will take you in for the night. The people who sleep on the street at night, at least in cities where shelters are available, I don't know how it is in Chicago. It's probably a much different city, but you don't have to stay outside. You don't have to starve. So if you find yourself on the street, put it firmly, move firmly and swiftly in the direction you want, and you'll find shelter, you'll find food, and it will probably be all entirely for free for as long as you need it, and you'll be fed well. Like, the portions were great sizes at the shelter. We were getting doubles. We were getting seconds on fish and okra, fried fish and fried okra. We were getting seconds on, we got a whole pizza from Little Caesars, large size, each of us basically, dropped off by some Christians who said, "This is a gift from the Lord," and it was truly a blessing. And it's really not bad. I mean, if you can live in a room with 40 people in bunk beds that are, basically, if you want out, if you want off the street, if you're broke, you don't have a cell phone, you don't know where the fuck you are, you can still find it. Sorry, I just got a little pop-up that said my phone is running out of storage. So I had to delete some saved movie that I guess buffered and stored onto my phone. It was like a couple gigabytes, so I should have some space. Doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what resources you have. Put your head down, get to a shelter, get to a hotel, put your thumb out, do some hitchhiking, get to the city you need to get to. You can do it, and from there, I mean, even if my parents hadn't decided that I could come home, that my dad would drive out to Michigan 4.5 hours and pick me up and take me home, I would have had 90 days to find a job, find a place to stay, find a friend to stay with, find a family member to stay with, find a job, find a way to make some cash, rest up, eat up. They were on quarantine from coronavirus, so you weren't allowed to leave the premises. They had a nice yard, soak in some sun. I don't know if it's the best association with other homeless people, but at least these are the homeless people who are smart enough to find a place to stay, or who are determined enough, or whatever. Anyways, don't panic. Remain calm. Proceed. And you'll be out of there in no time. So that's 8 things I learned from experiencing homelessness, or 9. Peace out. Enjoy your day. Enjoy the weather. Nice out. Put on a sweater. Later.